Perk Chovov, Posuk Aleph, V'hi B'rov Ba'oretz. Mulvad HaRov HaRishon, Ashahi B'mei Avrom. There was a famine in the land besides the original famine that was in time of Avram. Now, let's understand. Originally, everybody agrees one of the 10 tests that Avram was tested was Lech Lecha Me'artzecha. He should leave his homeland, his birthplaces, his family, comes to Canaan. He's there for 3 months, and then he's struck with a famine. Here he's promised he will have everything there: wealth, fame, children, and he leaves everything behind. This is the location that he will begin succeeding in his dissemination of monotheism, and all of a sudden he's forced to leave the land. There's a famine. So the Ramban explains that that was a test. That was a test. I mean, here Hashem says, go, you will have everything, and all of a sudden he's forced to leave. He could have asked, here I've gone, now I'm forced to leave, kept quiet. He says to his wife, we're going to Egypt. Went to Egypt. And he didn't have an easy time. He was concerned for his life, his wife. Miracles happened to come back with great wealth, so on and so forth. So why did the famine happen at the time of Rav Avinu? That he should be challenged with this question. Here I give up everything, and now I'm confronted with a famine. Remained silent, did not ask a question. He went, came back. Now, the challenges, there's no challenges for Yitzchak in terms of he's being tested, not being tested whatsoever. Torah tells us there's a famine. And what kind of famine? What was the level, the intensity of the famine? As it was at time of Avram. Firstly, what does it have to speak about? It was to that was the seriousness of the famine. Maybe you say, because that was, we'll see in a moment, that was the consideration to leave Canaan to go to Egypt, as his father went to Egypt. Right? I mean, what would be if it say there was a rov and he wanted to go to Egypt, and Hashem says in the moment, don't leave Canaan, don't go to Egypt. Vayilech Yitzchak, Elav Yimelech Pshishtim. And he went to Avimelech, the king of Plishtim, Gerora, Vayirel of Hashem, Vayomer Altered Mitzrayim. He says to him, don't go down to Egypt. Shchom Boretz, Asher Lecha. Dwell in the land that I tell you. Don't leave the land. If the Torah wouldn't have shared with us, it was a rov as was at the time of his father. Just left that out, and Hashem says, don't leave the land, remain in the land. Would have been lacking in understanding the narrative. What happened? He had a question, should he leave, should he not? Hashem says, don't leave. What does that Torah have to introduce this piece of information? It was a rov, there was a land of hunger in the land, besides the first hunger that happened time of Rav Avinu. Besides that, first let's tell us the intensity of the hunger. It was such a severe hunger as his father said. His father left, he would leave. But let's say we would have left that out. We'd understand. As Avram had a rov, it doesn't say there was any other hunger before. He left. Evidently, if Yitzchak is considered leaving, evidently he must have been such an extreme level of hunger, he's considered leaving, going to Egypt. So what does that have to say? Besides the rov, besides the famine that was the first famine that was time of Avraham Avinu. What do you say?
With respect, I'm not sure what you just said is any different than what I just said. Right? It's same set of facts, different decisions, so it begs explanation.
No. But why? Okay, I'm coming to explain why this piece of information was necessary. Why does Torah have to share with us this piece of information? There was a famine, he didn't go. He wanted to go because the famine was so severe, and he considered going. Hashem says, don't go. It tells me this is a famine since the famine, the time of his father. Sharing that little piece of information, telling Avram went to Egypt because of a famine, alluding to that. Why is that important? Tell me this regarding Yitzchak. He considered going because there was a famine. Hashem says, despite the difficulty, don't go. That was my question.
Okay, I'll let it go.
Okay.
And with Abraham, Hashem said to go.
Hashem didn't say a word. That was his own decision to go. Hashem did not tell him to go. Whatever.
Right. So.
But why did he go? Avram went. It was a test. When Avram was a test, they're not going to Egypt due to the famine. He didn't ask a question. He was converted. He went to Egypt. He dealt with the issue. He could have said, Hashem, here I just came. Now I have to leave. When he originally left, he didn't understand why he had to go. Later, he understood why he went, because this was Masa of Labanim. Afterwards, he understood that because he went, his children are going to go to Egypt, and when they leave Egypt, they're leaving with great wealth. Afterwards. And the reason why in the future, which I'm not sure if you knew, that the women there was going to be Jewish people. If they're going to be enslaved, that means what's going to be with the pedigree of the Jews. If they're slaves, the women are going to be defiled. How we're going to have a Jewish people. And the merit of Sarah, what she had done, that she didn't let herself be touched by although this was the height of civilization, her granddaughters merited divine protection. And therefore the pedigree of the Jew was set in place. Therefore there's going to be a Kabbalah Torah.
So Abram realized
in retrospect, he understood everything.
Right. He understood everything from that event of going to Egypt.
Right.
And that's the follow. Now Yitzchak is confronted with a famine.
So he understands he's a patriarch. He understands he's a patriarch.
Okay.
So all his experiences in life have to do with the future of the Jewish people. When he's confronted,
Avram didn't understand that.
He did understand it. He did understand it.
Afterwards, he understood it.
But he didn't understand how, if that piece of the puzzle had to do with the dynamic, to set the dynamic for the future.
And now we're saying that Yitzchak did understand that now.
Now, after he understood what happened to his father, now there's a consideration. Maybe my going has to do with what happened with my father.
Okay.
Maybe it's to skewer that dynamic, right? To solidify it. Hashem says, no, don't go. Remain in the land. I'm saying the reason why there was a consideration to go, it could have said just because of the famine. It wasn't just because of the famine. The going has relevance similar to what his father's going. And that was only in retrospect, Avram understood that. So he's following the same pattern as his father. I'm going to go because this has relevance to the future of Klal Yisrael. Hashem says, don't go. So let's talk now. So why did Hashem allow him to be confronted with this and says, no, remain in the land. Remain in the land. Right? Hashem says, no. So why have a famine? So it's for a different reason, as we're going to see. And he says to him, Gur ba'aretz hazos, remain in sojourn in the land, I will be with you and I will bless you. To you and your progeny, I will give you these lands. In the merit that Avram had heeded his voice, kept his laws, his mitzvahs, statutes, and his Torahs. We'll see Rashi in a minute. With Yitzchak, without talking about it, was a test. So why was he confronted with a famine? Why did Hashem say he shouldn't go out of the land? So there's beautiful medrash. The Yalkut says, what was Avram Avinu? I mentioned it. What was Yitzchak? Yitzchak was the originally was the sacrifice meant for the Akedah. So Yitzchak was consecrated as a korban. What's the halacha that if you have, let's say, a sin offering or a burnt offering, whatever it may be, and you begin the avodah, and you're in the confines of the azora, of the sanctuary, and before the avodah is completed, you you do part of the service outside, or you take the meat that's supposed to be eaten by the Kohanim, which is chatos, the sin offering, or kodesh kadoshim, an olah. The meat that's supposed to be sacrificed on the mizbeach, you take it outside of the sanctuary. What's the law? The korban is posel. The korban is invalidated. It's called psul yotzei. It's invalidated because you took it out of the confines of the azora, of the sanctuary. So the Medrash tells us, Eretz Yisrael being Eretz HaKadosh, the Holy Land, it is the equivalent of the sanctuary of the Beis Hamikdash. That's what it is. Yitzchak being the korban olah, being the burnt offering. Hashem says, you are the olah. And just as you're not permitted to take the olah, the burnt offering out of the confines of the sanctuary, you're not permitted to leave the confines of the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. Because if you leave, you become pasul, biyotze. You become invalidated. Therefore, you can't leave the land. That's what Hashem says. That's why Shchom Baritz. You want to go to Egypt, make life easier. No, you can't. Your father could, because you are that consecrated olah. Therefore, you can't leave the land. Remain, and because of the dimension of you are, as it says, I will bless you. The land will be your progenies, and the oath that I had sworn to your father, I'll uphold, and so on and so forth. That's the Medrash. It's to establish who is Yitzchak. He was confronted. Hashem said no. To establish who is Yitzchak. Yitzchak is the Olah Tmima. He's the unblemished offering, who provides the atonement for Klal Yisrael. As we said, the Akedah. The Akedah, whenever there's any prosecution upon the Jewish people, the merit of the Akedah silences that prosecution. Yitzchak leaving Eretz Yisrael at this moment would invalidate that. And if that is the case, what happens? Klal Yisrael will not be atoned. Because if the Olah becomes posel invalidated, it's ineffective. So it was essential he should not leave the land. Okay? That's my understanding of the Midrash. So I ask the question. What's the law if you consecrate an olah and before you slaughter it, you bring it into the azor, into the sanctuary, and you take it out of the sanctuary? Is it invalidated? No, it's not invalidated. It's only valid once you do the shechita, you slaughter it, and you do the service before the animal is burnt, completely burnt on the mizbeach. Since the service hasn't finished, it becomes invalidated with yotzei. Yitzchak is alive. Yitzchak is the living olah. He's the olah tamima, the unblemished offering. Why can't he go out of the land? The Medrash says, Hashem says, no way you can't. Just as you can't take the olah out of the azora, the burnt offering, because become invalidated. You leave, you'll become invalidated. How could he be? He's the living. He's like the consecrated animal, which hasn't been slaughtered. It's not invalidated. So what is the comparison? But you understand what was at stake. Before I explain it, leaving the land, what was at stake, what Satan tried to prevent from coming about, which would have been the only weapon we have in our cache of weapons is the Akedah. Satan tried in the worst way to undermine that. To stop him, he didn't succeed. Avram succeeded. But now we have a Yitzchak. Yitzchak going out of the confines of Canaan would actually invalidate him. And if he becomes invalidated, he's not going to quell the prosecution of Satan. Well, why not? Why? How does he become invalidated? His leaving. So now there's an interesting measure. We find that Hashem did not associate himself, his name, with any of the others as long as they were alive. Hashem only referred to himself as Elokei Avram after Avram passed away. He only associated his name with Yaakov, Elokei Yaakov, only after he passed away. But Yitzchak, even in his lifetime, towards when he was older, he referred to himself to Yaakov when he spoke to Yaakov. I am Elokei Yitzchak. But why doesn't Hashem associate his name with the Avos before they passed away? Because a person till the last moment of his life, he has Bechira, he has choice. And Chas v'Sholem, if any of them would have rejected Hashem at the last moment, how does Hashem associate his name with a person who could become a heretic? Therefore, until the book is closed on that person and his record is secure, Hashem does not associate his name with that person, even the Avos HaKadoshim. So he was only Elokei Avram after Avram passed away. He was only Elokei Yaakov after Yaakov passed away. But yet, Yitzchak, when he was still alive, and he communicated to Yaakov, he says, I am Elokei Yitzchak. Why? So the Midrash speaks about it. Reb Shimi Yochai, again, Reb Shimi Yochai, the author of the Zohar. Hashem does not associate his name with anyone, even the greatest tzaddikim, when they're alive, only after they passed away. Shenemar, a pasuk in Tehillim, l'kedoshim she'ba'aretz heima. The kedoshim who are in the land, who are there already. A mosai in kedoshim. When are they considered kedoshim? B'shein kfurim be'aretz. Only after they're buried in the land, their lives have ended. Only then are they kedoshim. Shekol zman she'en chayim ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu miyachid shmo aleim. As long as they're alive, Hashem will not associate his name with them. Why? Because Hashem doesn't have that level of reliance on them. Because they can be misled by the person as the Yetzer Hara till he passes away, till he dies. So since they're also subject to the Yetzer Hara till the last moment of their lives, but once they die, HaKadosh Baruch Hu miyachid shmo aleim. Hashem allows his name to be associated with them because they're kedoshim ba'aretz, because they're kedoshim, because they're already buried in the earth. So now the mention V'arei motzinu sheyichad HaKadosh Baruch Hu shmo al Yitzchak hatzadik b'chayav. So why, if this is the reality, why did Hashem associate his name with Yitzchak when he was alive? Shekeinu omer liYaakov Elokei Avram of Yichov Elokei Yitzchak. He refers to himself in Yitzchak's life to Yaakov. I am Elokei Yitzchak. Rebrechi v'Rabbanan Amri. The machlokas why. One says, Roa es Efro ki'ilu tzava al gabi mizbeach. After the Akedah, Yitzchak, Hashem sees Yitzchak as a pile of ash on the Mizbeach. So for all intents and purposes, Yitzchak was not subject to Yetzer Hara after the Akedah. If you remember, the Medrash tells us when Avram did the service with the Ayil, everything he would have done to Yitzchak, he had in mind, this should be the equivalent of Yitzchak. When I slaughter the Ayil, the ram, it should be like I'm slaughtering Yitzchak. When I receive the blood, it should be like Yitzchak's blood. When I sprinkle it, when I burn the Ayil, it should be as if I'm burning my son. And that's Yitzchak is the equivalent of the Ola Tmima. Yitzchak is the sacrifice because whatever intent he had in the Ayil, that intent. So Hashem sees Afro Shel Yitzchak Sovel Lefonov. We say this on Rosh Hashanah. So when Satan prosecutes, what does Hashem see? Which quells the prosecution? Afro Shel Yitzchak Sovel Lefonov. The ash of Yitzchak is piled before Hashem's eyes, Kavayochel. Okay? Now, Once the service is complete, we ask the question. So now, Yitzchak, although physically he's alive, but what is he? What is his innate value? He's the Afer, he's the ash, palm before Hashem's eyes. Even though he's a living human being. But his status, his value is like the pile of ash. Now, we had said that if in the middle of the service, if you take any part of that animal, the blood out of the Azora, or the carcass of the animal out of the Azora, it becomes disqualified, invalidated with Yotze. It went out of the confines. What about on the Mizbech, you finish, you sprinkle the blood, you burn the animal, you have the ash. And you want to take the ash out of the Azor. It's not a problem. It's after the service. Once the service is complete, the whole concept of invalidating the carbon is complete. Everything's in place. Regarding the Akedah, that service is never complete. Until the end of time, we need the Afro Shel Yitzchak to atone for the Jewish people, because there's always going to be a prosecution in the future. So the Afer of Yitzchak is always countering the prosecution of Sota. So we're always in the middle of the service. Therefore, even taking out the ash out of the Azora regarding Yitzchak, it will become possible Yotze. It'll become validated. You're taking it out of because it's still in the context of atoning for the Jewish people. Once the atonement is finished, it has no relevance because you're ready. It's completed. You secured it. You have the kapara. We need kapara continuous because every Rosh Hashanah, when sudden prosecutes Yom Adin, you need the Afro Shel Yitzchak. Therefore, Hashem says to Yitzchak, "You are the older Tamima. We're in the middle of the service. You are the Afer. As a result of that, you can't you can't leave the land." That's how I understand it. So we speak about the Akedah being an atonement. It's not something that happened only in the past. Yitzchak, as long as he was alive, representing that, he had until he passed away. Was the Afro Shel Yitzchak, so it could be invalidated. And now Hashem still sees that the Afro Shel Yitzchak, and because he represented that, he was that. Therefore, whenever someone prosecutes, that silences the prosecution of Satan. First opinion is of the Chachamim. That's the majority opinion. Reb Rechia Omar, Rashi cites the second opinion. Hov in this Yase Beinov, since he became blind. Kilo Mes, the Gemara tells us that Sum Choshev Kimes. A blind person is like a person who's not alive any longer. The Fisher Godnus L'toch Habayis, because he was blind, he was confined to the house. The Yetzirah Posek Bimenu. Therefore, he was no longer subject to the Yetzirah. He was blind and he couldn't go out, and he was confined to the house. Therefore, he wasn't subject. Therefore, the Torah says when he became old, he became blind. At that moment, he was no longer subject to the Yetzirah. Therefore, this was when Hashem came to Yaakov. It was after he was blind. This was after the taking of the Bechorah. Okay, this is the understanding.
Rabbi, if the Ayil was the replacement for Yitzchak, and it was shechted and burned to the what reason does Yitzchak have? Because he's alive, therefore, what does that have to do with anything? The shechting of the animal was the replacement for Yitzchak, and
okay, but it's called Afro Shel Yitzchak. Yitzchak himself, it's like what gave Yitzchak the status of the pile of ash that atones for the Jewish people. That's how it was facilitated. It was facilitated through the Ayil.
okay,
You are this because. But what are you today? You are the atonement for the Jewish people, not only now, even for the future. That's what you represent.
So what does him being alive have to do with anything then? I mean, if you say
No, the question was, if you're alive, you take a carbon after you consecrate it, a burnt over, and you take it out of the Azora. Does it become disqualified? No. because the service hadn't yet begun regarding that particular korban. Only once you start the shechita, then you can't take it out of the confines of the sanctuary. Yitzchak, the avodah, we're still in the middle of the avodah, because Yitzchak is an ongoing atonement till the end of time. That's why he can't be taken out of Eretz Yisrael. Okay. The members of the community asked about his wife. He said, it's my sister. He was afraid to say it's my wife. Because maybe the members of the community would kill him because of Rivka Kitovas Mari, because she was beautiful. Same story like Sari made it. When he was there for an extended period of time, he had gazed at the window, meaning he saw a certain level of relationship between Yitzchak and Rivka. There was a degree of modesty, of privacy he maintained, which to him it was an indication that it's more than a brother-sister relationship here. This is his wife. Vayar, and he understood, he's intimate with her. So do the way Yitzchak conducted himself when it says he looked through the window. It's not Yitzchak left the window open, and when they were intimate, he had seen something. It means the way he conducted himself in terms of his tznius, his modesty, he understood from that type of behavior, this is the way husband and wife conduct themselves. So he understood mitzachik, that they're being intimate. He said, behold, you told me she's your wife. So how did you initially say she's your sister? The reason why I presented her as my sister was I was concerned my life was at stake. I would die because of her. Therefore, I had no choice. I had to say Achosi. This is a similar scenario. He's not finished. See, with Avram Avinu, he took her, and he said, why did you tell me she's your sister? He says, because of the same thing. I would have been killed. Because 8 years, Hashem b'mokmazeh, 8 years of Elokim, there's no fear of God here. There's no fear of God, you could justify anything. He just said, I was concerned for my life. Vayomer Avimelech Mazo Sosiso Lanu. What did you do? You put us in a very precarious situation. The special person of this community, he was referring to himself, he could have cohabited with your wife, and you would have brought a level of guilt upon the nation, which is unforgivable. He gave the word, immediately gave the order. Anybody who even approaches this man or his wife, they'll be put to death. I mean, he became such a tzaddik. So why did he kill him? With Avram, what was the story? They were smitten, as it says. All their function ceased to be. And Hashem came to Avimelech and says, you don't give back this man's wife, you and your community will all die. Over here, it doesn't say that. When he saw they were mitzachek, he said, don't you realize what could have happened? I could have had relations with your wife, and you would have brought this level of guilt, this claim against us. He gives the order, anybody approaches this man or his wife, will be put to death. Hashem didn't read him the right act. Correct? You understand? Avimelech understood who's Yitzchak. Yitzchak is the son of his father. When he consider taking sorry menu. What happened? Whether this is the same Avimelech or not doesn't make a difference. It's the recent times. What happened? The whole nation would have perished if Sarah wouldn't have been given back. That's what Hashem had said to Avimelech. Now that he realizes what could have happened, he does not be threatened. He understands that if he crosses that line, which he would have with anybody else, he would have killed the husband, taking the woman. But now that he understands who she is, there's no way he's even go near her. And therefore he gives the order, anybody who approaches this man or his wife, Mos Yomus, Kolon Dogeh, even if he touches the person, even if he approaches him, he's arm's length from everyone. Although he didn't experience what the previous Avimelech experienced. Avimelech is like the Paro. It's the title of the monarch of the Philistine civilization, Avimelech. Vayizra Yitzchak b'oretz ha'hi. Yitzchak planted that year, although there was a v'yimtzo b'ashon hi meir she'orim v'yircheu Hashem. He found the crop, the yield of the crop that year was 100 times a normal yield of a crop. You hear this? During a ordinary year, you never have this kind of yield. This is a famine year. And despite the famine year, it was 100 times a normal crop. That was the yield. Hashem. So Rashi says, what's Meisha Orim? He told him, don't leave the land. I will be with you and I will bless you. So the Meisha Orim was as a result of our cheko. I will bless you. You know, we've had this many times. Remember, we spoke about the significance of number 100. Well, the term early mentioned many times that Yitzchak was born when Avram was 100 years old. Yitzchak planted Meisha Orim, 100. All the 12 tribes were born to Yaakov after he was 100 years old. Everything was after 100. Right? Binyamin, the 12th son, was born, he was over 100 years old. 100 was a crucial number. Here he planted Meisha Orim. What is the significance of 100? What does it signify? So if you remember, later we're going to read about Yaakov when he came back after being away for 36 years, came back to Canaan, he purchased a piece of property for Mea Ksita, for 100 Ksita. Torah shares with us what it cost him. So we had mentioned then the Kli Yoker explains why does the Torah speak about the Mea Ksita. He purchased the land for Mea Ksita, then it says he built a Mizbeach. Hashem, he explains, based on the Medrash, that Adam Rishon, before he ate of Deitz Hadas, what was his height? How tall was he? He was min ha'oretz al shamayim, from heaven, from earth to heaven. That was his height. After he ate of the Deitz Hadas, how tall was Adam Rishon? He was 100 amos in height. The Medrash says Hashem put his palm kaviyochel on him, and he minimized him to 100 amos. So what was the consequence of the chet of Deitz Hadas? The evil that intermingled into the Bria. To what degree did it minimize Adam? He went from an unlimited height to 100 amma. So the effect of the evil is represented by 100. That was the consequence of Mea Amma. He says the Beis Hamikdash that Shlomo built, the Heichal, the sanctuary, the covet was 100 amma. Why was it 100 amma? Because what is the value of the Beis Hamikdash? Kapora, atonement. Why does one need atonement? To deal with the effect of the Yetzer Hara, of the evil. So you need 100 to counter the 100. Therefore, the height of the Azora of the Heichel was 100. This is the Kli Yoker. So he says, Yaakov purchased the land for 100 ksito. Because what does 100 represent? That is the counter number to counter the effect of the evil of the Eitz Hadas. So before he built the Mizbeach, he had to consecrate the location with the purchase of 100. That's the mayor. And then he built the Mizbeach. That's the Kli Yoker, the way he explains over there. Yaakov first purchased it for 100, then he built the Mizbeach. Despite the famine year, he said he had a yield of 100 times of a normal yield. What's 100? And the Baal Turim says that 100 also represents all of them. That's 100. He took on this whole new level of status. He was established. Yitzchak, this moment, was established as the Av, that he's the one who's going to counter that evil of the Eitz Hadas. That's this 100. And we're going to see something now. He was driven out of the land. It says, Vayigdal ish, vayelech holech, v'godel ad ki godel mod. He started to advance and grow till he was very great. What's the very great? We had this Tosis in Bab Mitzvah. We had it recently. Godel mod, Yud Gimel, take a look. She omrim zevel preidosov shel Yitzchak v'lo kasbo zavu shel Avimelech. The people were saying we prefer the dung of the mules of Yitzchak than the silver and gold of Avimelech. You take the dung of Yitzchak and you put it in the field, what grows? Gold. You take the silver and gold of Avimelech, what grows? Dung. Avimelech couldn't handle it. So what did they do? They said, could you please leave our community? Vilo mikta tzon bokav avudu rabba v'yikanu oso plishtim. V'chol abeirus shechofru avdei oviv v'mei Avram oviv. Sidmu plishtim v'malam ofer. All the wells that Avram had dug, the plishtim, the Philistines, they sealed those wells and they filled it with earth. It's interesting. They sealed the wells. They sealed it with earth or whatever they sealed them with. It says they sealed the wells and they filled it with offer. So there's a Ramban here. Now, spirituality is the equivalent of mayim, water. Water is the source of all life. The Gemara in Tainus cites psukim. If you're thirsty, you should go towards the water. Torah is nimshul kamayim. In the spiritual realm, what sustains all existence? That's Torah. Torah is the equivalent of mayim. That's why a person has to be humble. Because it has the characteristic of water. Just as water flows from an elevated location to a low location, identically, Torah can only be contained in a person who has a humble spirit. Okay? Why did they seal the wells? Because when Avram dug those wells, he did something in the physical existence by having that water. That was representation. He opened all the channels of spirituality that they should be able to flow in this world. That this world should be impacted through the spirituality of the Torah. That was the significance of digging those wells. The Plishtim, they sealed those wells. They tried to undermine it that should not have a representation in this existence. I'm telling you the Ramban over here. That's why they sealed the wells. So now why it says they sealed it with offer. What does offer represent? Offer is earthiness. This world has no realms to spirituality. We had mentioned Rabbeinu Bachya, all the monarchs of Egypt, what were they called? Paro. So Rabbeinu Bachya says, why Paro? Because the letters Ayin Pei Reish are part of that, the title of Paro. They believed that this world has no relevance to spirituality. God may have created the world, but he has no relevance to its existence. This world is purely physical. So they took the wells that Avram dug specifically, that they should water, they sealed them. But what did they seal it with? They sealed it. It doesn't really make a difference to what they sealed them with. They put a lid on it. They filled it with offer. This world is offer. It's similar to what if Rabbeinu Bachya says, that's paro. Ayin Peiresh. This world is all material. Nothing outside the material realm has realms in this world. But what set him? So what is now? Yitzchak is Meir She'orim. Yitzchak has what level of representation now? He is the counterforce to the evil of the Yetzer Hara. Avram Avinu, in his time, he had that son when he was 100 years old. That's the 100. 100, he counters the 100 of the consequence of the Yetzer Hara. Yitzchak now is his successor. At this time, he goes and he plants, he has 100. Now, what happens? You must leave our community because you're too much for us. You've overwhelmed us. And what does Yitzchak do? He went and redug the wells. Yeah. He redug as Beirus Hamayim. What does that say, Beirus Hamayim? He dug Beiros. What's Beirus Hamayim? He wanted to reinstate what his father had done in terms of the world, its capacity to have relevance to spirituality. He redug those wells. Who the Plishtim had sealed after Avram passed away. And he renamed them the same names as his father did, because those names depict and establish them for what their value was. They dug in the valley, and they found a wellspring. That well belongs to us. It was called contentious because they fought over it. That was the contentious bear. Again, what was the fight? What is its representation? It's ours. This water does not represent what you want it to represent. You know, there's a famous Rosh Haran. He writes, and it has to do with Maisa of Similar Bonim, that you find every Navi, when he had a prophecy, very often what was going to happen in the future, he did a physical action to actualize, to set the dynamic for the future. He would throw a stone, he would take grass and throw it into the wind. You had to do some action to actualize and to activate that dynamic that's meant to take into place. That secures that dynamic. He dug the well, the water. They fought. What did they fight over? What was the fight over this water? What does this water represent? Is this just water? The world needs water? Or when he dug it with that intent, was to reestablish its representation in this world. That's Torah. This is the foundation. This is Bishul Rashis Barasi. This is for the sake of Torah, this world was created. So everything has to be set in place. Okay, we're late.